Thank you. I'll do the roll call. President Broussard.
Here.
Thank you. Vice President Covello.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyle.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Schiffer.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Rithaler.
Here.
Commissioner Cura.
Here.
Commissioner Francisco.
Here.
Commissioner Wildcat.
She was here earlier.
Commissioner Wildcat, did we? Oh, there you are.
Hear me?
You're there. Senator Driscoll, are you on the line? Senator Driscoll? Representative Newsom,
Here.
good morning. And Governor's Liaison Tom Lubino.
Here.
Thank you, sir. President Broussard, we have a quorum. We also have Mike Kaler joining us from the Attorney General's office, and we do have some other public participation also on the call today.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. Do you want to do the welcome and
Yes, sir.
the roll?
Yes, I can. Excuse me, let's get to the right page. Welcome to the June 20th, 2023 special meeting of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Individuals who wish to address the commission will be recognized and called on by the president to speak. After the president has recognized you, please clearly state your name, the name of the organization you represent. All comments, questions, and responses must flow through the president by addressing the president each time you wish to speak. This procedure ensures an orderly flow of discussion during the commission meeting. All meetings of the governing body of an agency are public meetings open to the public, except as otherwise provided pursuant to Wyoming statutes 16-403A. The commission may open an executive session pursuant to Wyoming statutes 16-4405A. The meeting is being held via Zoom and is also available to watch live via video streaming on the YouTube link, and inclusion on the agenda does not necessarily constitute a commission action. Just as a little bit of housekeeping, if you're not speaking, this is being held as a webinar. So if the public is not necessarily speaking, to please turn your camera off so the commissioners, wouldn't be distracted from that. And also, if you're not speaking, if you could please mute your computer, so we don't have that problems. That's all I have. President Broussard, we've got.
Thank you, Charlie. So we'll go straight to the Pledge of Allegiance and get the meeting going. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
And who is that? Who made the motion?
Commissioner Covello.
Oh, thank you,
I'll
sir.
second that. Commissioner
Holler, thank you. At this point, we'll open it for discussion. If there's none, we'll move on. Any discussion about the agenda?
Taxes for 2 straight years and didn't pay back until.
I think that's Senator Driscoll's. Okay, so I don't think we have any comment, so we'll call the vote. So all in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Looks like we got it. Okay, moving on. Item 3. Minutes for the first meeting, March 30th. Entertain a motion to adopt the minutes. We've taken a look at that.
And President Broussard, if I could, we have 2 sets of minutes here in our packet. We have the, like you said, we have the March 30th, and then we also have the May 16th. This could be one motion if you'd like to, or we can take those separately.
I'll take the hint. How about if we accept a motion? I'll entertain a motion to accept both minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to accept both minutes?
Yeah, Mr. President, Dan Schiffer here. I move to accept both minutes.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr. President, Commissioner Covello, second.
Thank you, Cactus. Any comments? No comments? We will call the roll, call the vote. So all in favor of accepting both minutes for March 30 and May 16th, indicate by saying aye.
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 If you're opposed, say nay. All right. Sounds like we got that one too. Item number 4.
Thank you, President Broussard. I'll take this. Item number 4, rules. A, it's Chapter 7, licenses, emergency rule, and regular set of rules. In your packet, you have 2 sets of drafts. You have the emergency rule draft and the regular rule draft. They are both identical. There's no differences between the two. What the commission staff is proposing and working with the Attorney General's office and the governor's office is an emergency rule to help mitigate some of the issues that we have regarding the FBI Criminal Justice Unit background checks and the upcoming grace period that's potentially going to end on July 1st. As you can see, commissioners, I think I did provide to you the letter from Jeff Cullum. I think it's important too, and if it's okay with you, President Broussard, to kind of go over just a brief timeline and bring everybody back up to speed. Is that okay, sir? Thank you. On October of 2021, we were notified by DCI via the CJIS unit and the FBI that they had issues with our parimutuel side of licensing and the authority to do background checks. And at that time, we were given a grace period to July 1 of 23. October to January of that same year in 2021, we were working with the FBI and the CJIS unit through the DCI to try to resolve some of this issue. 2022 session came shortly after that. And at that point, we had some other pressing issues to take care of. And so it was discussed that we would not bring forth any legislative changes at that time. In 2022, at the end of the session, I brought this forward as an interim topic and requested to work with this and work with Joint Appropriations Committee in the summer of 2022. Again, during the 22 interim, Joint Appropriations Committee took up the topic. They drafted a bill, came out with a committee bill. That bill was presented in the 2023 session. It passed the House. Then the bill went on over to the Senate and on the Senate side, and it was failed to be considered in committee. So it failed. So here we are today. The emergency rules that we're proposing will not fix the problem, but what it does, it will be able to mitigate some of the issues and the negative impact. Again, I want to reiterate, this is not a fix to the problem. It's just a way to mitigate some of the damages that will be caused from this. We are still working with the FBI. As of just last week, the director and the deputy director and the program manager with CJIS or with DCI have all been communicating with the feds, with the CJIS unit, with the FBI, trying to get an additional grace period until 2024. So we're continuing to work with that. We don't know how that will work out. The rules that we're providing today as an emergency set of rules and as a regular set of rules will not only benefit the industry in the long run, but help mitigate some of the concerns we have up front. That's really all I have at this point, commissioners.
So you and I texted a little bit, Charlie, but I guess my overall concern for all rules is, is there a downside? Is there a complication that we haven't considered? And that's my only question. It's not a loaded question. It's a general question for every rule I've ever seen. So at this point, we're going to look for a motion. And then we'll open it for discussion.
Mr. President, Commissioner Kura,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the emergency rules for 2023. And hopefully the legislation will take care of itself this next session.
Is that chapter 7
Yes,
only?
chapter
Okay.
7.
And just for clarification, that would be draft version 1-06-0123, emergency chapter 7.
Dick, is that
Yes,
what you
that's,
said? Yep.
that's what
Okay.
I'm pertaining to, yes.
Yes, sir.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Okay. We got a second from Commissioner Wildcat, I sound like. And then now we'll open it for discussion. Do we have questions from the commission?
Mr. President,
Yep.
Commissioner Kura.
Go ahead, Dick.
This is for Charlie. Is this going to really put a hamper on the licensing aspect for our people, or will they be able to continue with the 3-year licensing if they so desire? Is that correct?
I'm turning up the volume on my computer here a little bit. Could you repeat the question? I apologize.
My question is this going to really foul up the licensing with our division? Or will it allow or hopefully allow the participants to get the 3-year license instead of just going yearly?
You know, there, as we see it here, and we've discussed this quite a bit, and also to respond to President Broussard's concerns with this, this is going to assist our licensing. This is going to help us short-term and long-term. I see no negative side to doing this. This gives us, it's a may. The commission may renew licenses at their discretion without requiring fingerprints or a national criminal history record background check, so long as that national criminal history record background check was completed and verified by the commission in the last 3 years. So it's consistent with our authority to issue 3-year licenses, and it allows us to renew it. Currently in our statutes and currently in our rules, we don't have anything that identifies a renewal license. So this identifies that we do have the ability to renew, and then we can do that. And we can also do it absent if they've been renewed and they've had their background check. Then we won't have to run another one until that expires.
Correct. And that background check is within the last year. Is that correct?
It would be within the last 3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. That works.
Yes, sir. I
Thank you.
hope that's answered your question. I hope it maybe helped President Broussard as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. President, this is Commissioner Bowl. Charlie or Mr. Moore, if we enact the emergency rules, do we need to consider the regular rules for Chapter 7?
Could you cut out? I think the question maybe was, do we need to run regular rules simultaneously? Is that what you were asking, sir?
That's correct, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yes, and that's what we would move to the next. Typically, what you do when you have emergency rules, and as you see at the top of the page there, emergency rules are in effect no longer than 120 days after filing with the Register of Rules, so they would expire. To continue those on beyond that, we would want to have a motion, a follow-up motion that would allow the second draft that's in your packet to move along at the same time. And this has a long-term and a short-term benefit. So, you know, it's going to be it's going to help the agency quite a bit in their licensing and the permittees and our clients as well.
Your
Charlie-
Honor.
Yeah, Commissioner Bowl, you have the floor, Commissioner Bowl. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Moore, have we done the notification and the opportunity for public input on the regular rules?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Bowl. At this point, no. The first step in our rule process is to get the approval to move forward from you all. As soon as this happens, the way the process would work, we would simultaneously, the set of rules and the memo and a memo regarding the emergency would go to the governor's office. What we would plan to do is submit that to the governor's office this week, and have that headed that direction. At the same time, we will start with the regular rules to where we will then ask for the permission additionally from the governor to move those. And then we will move into public comment after he has had an opportunity to sign off on those. Emergency rules would be absent public comment. They would go into effect immediately upon the signature of the governor's office. Did that help you, sir?
It does. Thank you for the explanation. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. President, Dan Schiffer.
Dan, you have it. Go ahead.
I was wondering if Charlie could comment on if we have someone who has not been licensed, a new licensee. How do we deal with that under this rule?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Schiffer. A new individual as it stands today, a new person who has never been licensed in the state of Wyoming, we would be unable to perform a criminal history background check. Therefore, we would be unable to license that person. This is only going to assist us and help us with the renewing individuals. And several years ago, to give you a little bit more of a history on this, probably 7-8 years ago, I believe, the commission reviewed some of our enabling statutes and determined that every applicant, considering the statutes, every applicant shall be required to submit to a criminal history background check. And that is also pursuant to if you read the statutes and you look at, I can pull it up real quickly here.
Charlie, we have a reprieve until when? So somebody can apply now until July, is that correct?
Yes. To answer
So
your question.
Yeah, so after that date, we can't do a national background check.
Right.
But we can until July, is that correct?
We can till July 1st, yes. And also something just to clarify, so at this point, the motion is to adopt the emergency rules, and you have a second, and we're in discussion. We would then need to have another motion at the conclusion of this to adopt the regular set of rules. And again, go through the same procedure.
The main difference is under A, it expires in 120 days. But then in the next 120 days, that I'm going to guess that's when you do the majority of your licensing anyway. Is that correct?
That would be correct. Yes, sir.
Do we do a lot of after, say, September, October?
Anymore we're busy pretty much year round, except especially with some of the expansions and different things, but it does. Our busiest time of the year is right now, with live racing going on. That's where we have the log jam currently. So the emergency rules would run along simultaneously with the regular rules. And the plan is, once the regular rules run out, you've had your 45-day public comment, you've had public input and everything, and you go through and then continue on with it through the regular set of rules.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the commission?
Commissioner Rittoler?
You go ahead, Commissioner Hall.
Will it be the typical 75 days for the governor to be able to, before he signs this?
The emergency rules would go into effect upon his signature
But the other rules, there's 75 days that he has it. He can have it on front of his desk before so I was just curious if that was going to be.
And that would be for the regular rules. You would have your 45-day public comment. At the conclusion of the 45-day public comment, we would have a meeting to consider those. And then we would send those to the governor for his signature, and he would have up to 75 days. Yes, he would.
But not on the emergency rules.
On the emergency rules, he's giving his approval up on the front end. And we can start those immediately.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll keep it open for commissioners. Any more commissioner questions? No?
I have none.
Okay, at this point, then I will open it up to anybody else. Nick, do you have hands or folks who'd like to comment from outside the commission?
President Broussard, I don't see any hands at this time. People can also unmute themselves and
Okay.
do it directly that way as well.
Okay, in the allowing technology, we'll give it another 20 seconds to see if anybody would like to make a comment. Either unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll go.
President Broussard, again, just for clarification, what we would be doing today with the emergency rules would be adopting the emergency rules. Then we would be approving the regular set of rules to move forward. So a little bit of wordsmithing in there.
So Charlie, what happens just if we adopt the emergency rules, but is there we have that will go into effect without item 4B?
I believe that would be correct.
And then we'd have 120 days minus 45, 50 days to do we'd have some period of time to see how the rules affect anything. Is that correct?
Well, that would be correct. And again, thank you for your consideration. I think, it would be a preference, I would think, to adopt the emergency rules today and approve us to proceed with the regular rules at the same time. As far as logistically things go, and there's also, understand the way the process goes. Part of your hesitation that you have at any point, if you approve us to start that process, the commission could decide to say, you know what, we've had comments on this. We've had different things that have come up on this, and we want to pull the plug on the regular set. So, it would be the preference of this office that you would adopt the emergency rules today, pursuant to a motion and everything, and then approve us to proceed with the regular set of rules.
Okay. Just a point of clarification for me. If one of two things happens, either if the legislature makes the correct changes or the FBI changes its opinion, this becomes unnecessary.
Again, thank you for the question. Somewhat, but what this allows us more than anything is to renew applications. When you look at this, currently, we don't have a rule that guides us for renewals. So we are considering every application that comes in as a new application. So by allowing us to do renewals, that simplifies our process, allows us to, up to 3 years if you've had a background check, and this is going to alleviate a lot of the stress that we have on our clients, and also solve piece of this and mitigate a piece of this problem.
So as you're doing it now, even a 3-year license is processed as a new license, even though they've had one in the past.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you, Charlie. So I see a hand. Nick, do you have to let Frank in, or can he do it on his own?
President Broussard, he can speak now. He's ready.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself. Go ahead, Frank, you have the floor.
President Broussard, members of the commission, thank you very much for letting me speak on this issue. You know, I don't have a problem with the rule, and not really speaking so much to the rule. I think it's probably, it doesn't address the problem. As I see it, you know, your statute says that the commission is authorized to do background checks. And it also says that someone applying for a license must provide their fingerprints in order to do that. It doesn't say that you have to send those fingerprints in every year after year. It doesn't say you have to send them in every 6 months. It didn't say you have to send them in every 3 years. It doesn't address that. The commission, in my opinion, can do it any way they want. To say that you can't accept a new license because the FBI's told you they're not going to accept your fingerprints really doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see that. I see that you can accept any new license. They have to provide you fingerprints. Now, what you do with those fingerprints is entirely up to the commission, whether you send them to the FBI or another source of investigation, which there are others. There's the regional investigations that DCI does. We've done it all kinds of different ways over the past 20 or 30 years. This isn't anything new. So to just flat say, no, can't be licensed if we can't send them to the FBI because one person decided that our statute wasn't good enough for them when it has been for many, many years. I think we're just ignoring the real problem here by looking at this rule. And the rule's fine. You can pass the rule if you want, but I think the real problem is saying that you can't license people without an FBI background check. I think we really need to, the commission needs to really take a harder look at this and explore all avenues. I don't see this as a dead end when one person at the FBI says this. I really don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions from the gallery or observers, non-commission? Commissioner Schiffer, you? No.
President Broussard, I would just comment on, I think that the background checks are critically important for the integrity of our industry in the horse racing world. If you do have a scammer or a cheater and they get money from purses, then, we have to go chase that money to get it back. If we defer the process and later find out he wasn't eligible or she wasn't eligible for licensing. So, I think we have to take a firm stance to support our horsemen and the wagering public here. And to just defer the issue is not really what I would call a solid solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So now, any other commissioners have questions for Charlie or even Frank or?
President Broussard,
Yep.
what I'd like to do at this point is turn it over to Nick to explain to you the shall that's involved in this process that requires us to access criminal history. And again, like I said, I think it was 10 years ago during a commission meeting, we had discussed this same issue. But I'm going to turn it over to Nick to explain 719-201 to the commission.
Okay, Nick, go ahead. You got the floor.
Thank you, President Broussard. I'm just pulling up the statute here. Let's see. So under 719-201, the state statute that we submit our fingerprints under, Under subsection A, it says that the following person shall be required to submit fingerprints in order to obtain a state and national criminal history record check. So us just sitting on those, we've talked about that because, Frank's right. It doesn't say that we have to submit them every year. It doesn't say we have to submit them every 6 months, but it does say that we are required to obtain those fingerprints to obtain the state and national criminal history check. So when we read all of this together, it implies that when we get those fingerprints, we are required to send those fingerprints off. So the fact that we get them every year, we're required to send them off every year. So I hope that kind of clarifies it. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this. We have researched this and looked at 1,000 different things to do. As far as the rule goes, I think it is kind of one other thing that I would just like to add to that with doing the renewals. If you get a 3-year license, you're required to do prints once every 3 years, and then you're good. If you get an annual license, this rule would just make it that you would get fingerprints on the 1st year, and then on the 4th year, and then on the 7th year. That's also a cost saver for the commission. So the 3-year licenses, we submit them once every 3 years and we pay the $50. On the annual licenses, it's $150 that we send their prints off every year. So, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions on this. But we've read through this and worked with the Attorney General's office. And I mean, it does say that we are required to get the fingerprints to obtain those. So
Yeah.
It appears to us that we have to send them off when we get them.
And Nick, it says we need to send the fingerprints to both a state and a federal
That's
entity?
what it says. Yeah, it says that they're required to submit fingerprints in order to obtain a state and national criminal history. So we have to do both.
And at this point, we have no trouble with the state. We're just trying to find a federal entity. And
Correct.
by default, there's only one federal entity?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a good point, President Broussard. There is only one national criminal history that's recognized in this situation. There are multiple different background check companies around, but there's only one that fits this, what we have in statute, and that is the FBI.
Okay. So going forward, we still have a few people that'll be dangling. Is that correct? Even with this rule? So this rule is just going to allow the commission clearly to not have to send fingerprints as often as we do now.
President
That's
Broussard,
correct.
that is correct, but what it's going to allow the clients, the licensees, to be able to, if they've been background checked in the last 3 years through us and we're renewing their application, they will not be required to go through fingerprinting again.
Okay. I see Frank again. Nick, do you see anybody else? Any other hands?
President Broussard, just Frank.
Okay, go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, President Broussard. I do not disagree that we need criminal history background checks. Believe me, I think that's very important to our industry. I also know that it takes months to get those criminal history background checks back, and the race season is over before those are back. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but the real point here is, and I still think we're missing it. I'm hearing that I'm hearing Nick's interpretation of the rule, of the statute. I've not seen anything in writing from the Attorney General that says this is what the statute says and this is how it has to be interpreted. I would think for something this important that you would get, that the Attorney General would have to give you an opinion on what that statute says, that you can't license someone unless you get their fingerprints and can send them to the FBI, because that's not what the statute says. And so in my opinion, so I still say this is way bigger than what this rule is that we're talking about. And although like I said, I have no problem with the rule, but there's a way bigger issue here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
President Broussard, if I could follow up on that just briefly.
Of course, Charlie, go ahead.
And, I don't disagree with you on this, Frank, at all. This is not of our making. And what has changed in this whole thing is the interpretation from the FBI. So that is what has changed. It does take a while to get those back. It doesn't take several months. We get those turned around fairly quickly with DCI, and we do come back and we have what we call do not process for the next year. So we do take care of it that way. And it is a big situation. And I think maybe Mr. Kaler can speak to, he's jumped on here. I don't know if he wants to speak to the AG's interpretation of that or not, to help the commissioners understand this.
Here, Michael, are you available?
I am. Thank you, President Broussard. Yeah, and just a comment. Our office, we advise state agencies. We don't give opinions to Mr. Lamb, for example, and we have our discussions in private. And if the commission would like to hear our interpretation, certainly we would not do that in an open meeting. We would need to go into executive session to give you attorney-client privileged information.
So you do have that. You've already made an interpretation, Michael? Yeah.
Mr. President, yeah,
Okay.
we've spent countless hours discussing this issue, and we're proceeding accordingly.
And that's where we are now.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just at this point we will move forward. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but if we have more comments, I will open it up now. Any other hands, any commissions who want to ask a question about this? Please speak up.
Mr. President, this is Commissioner Bowl. Frank, do you see a downside with proceeding with the emergency rule and starting the formal rule process on this? It just gives us time. Do you see a downside for that?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bowl, I do not see a downside to the rule at all. But like I said, there's a bigger situation here, much bigger. It doesn't affect Wyoming Downs as much as it would affect Sweetwater Downs, who hasn't started running, and they won't start running until after July 1st. So I think it's just a huge disservice to them to not really take a very hard look at what can be done to license new individuals, because they're going to need to. And we may need to as well. I mean, we run through the first week of August, but it doesn't affect us as much, like I said, because we're already running. And answer your question again, though, no, I don't see a downside to the rule. Historically, the commission has done the same thing by, not by rule, but by just policy. For years, we would not take would not process fingerprints, or not even take fingerprints of someone that showed a license from a state that took fingerprints. So it was reciprocity with other states that fingerprinted. And then for a while we did it with just with states that did fingerprints for every 3 years, which is similar to what you're talking about here. So there's been all kinds of different ways of doing this. I mean, like I said, background checks are important. We know that, but you got to remember, the one, if you look at the percentage of people that that lie on their application about any criminal history, it's usually about around 1%. And so it's a very small percentage. Now, and you got to catch those guys, no doubt. But we're not talking about the majority here. And 9 times out of 10, if it's a major violation, if someone's done something criminally in a major way, we know about it long before we ever get a background check. This is a very competitive business, and people are not going to allow competitors that are nefarious actors to compete against them. And so that informants are all over the place in that regard. But I hope I answered your question.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
given that explanation, my horse manure opinion is we ought to proceed and adopt the rule, and we can continue to think about this and talk about it. But I don't see a downside either with adopting the emergency rule and starting the formal rulemaking process for Chapter 7.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Frank. So I know it'd be off topic, but I agree with Commissioner Bowl. But I also think this is not a fix to the big problem. It's an assistance to the commission to process a few more, maybe, or get some more people in there. But Charlie, what's your thoughts on the reciprocity comment from Frank?
Yeah,
we
thank
have-
you, President
do you-
Broussard.
Yep.
And I agree with quite a bit of what Frank says, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the one statute. We shall submit. So we have to. We can't break the law. And we have that problem. The FBI will not accept those at this point. So, you've asked about downside of the rule, and I don't see any downside. Some of the things that Mr. Lamb has mentioned about the reciprocities and different things like that, we haven't been doing that for several years because we had that interpretation and dealt with that. Again, I'm not sure what year it was. We talked about this, but I do know at the time we had Commissioner Dobbs, which was at that time he had retired from DCI on the commission, and they interpreted it as they shall, each time an application is being accepted, they shall submit fingerprints. So this is, as I state in all of my documents, this is a way to mitigate a portion of this, a small piece of this. There is a bigger conversation. We've been having this bigger conversation for quite some time. The operators have known about this pending and coming. The legislation was out there. This was discussed in interim committee last summer as well. For quite a few meetings to come up with a bill to fix it. The bill ultimately did not get considered in the Senate. And, that happens quite a bit. So hopefully we can get an extension of the grace period before the 1st of July, then we can continue on business as usual, and then continue to look at maybe potentially either legislation that will clear it up or legislation that maybe potentially would lessen some of that restrictions that we do have in statutes. So.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, let's go around. Anyone from the commission who would like to make a comment or question Charlie? Mike? No one? Anybody from outside the commission who has a question for anyone who spoke? Okay, then I will go ahead and call the vote.
And just for clarification, we're adopting the emergency set of rules. We're not accepting the emergency set of rules.
Okay. All right, so the first step of adopting, the motion was made to adopt these emergency rules. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. I think the ayes have it. Okay, thank you. So Charlie, do you want to make any comments about item 4B before we get
I think
going?
we've talked about it quite a bit.
Okay,
At this
Yeah.
point. And, you know, we can consider that and start the regular process as we've talked about. We beat it up, both of them pretty good. So I
Okay.
think we've done a good job.
all right. So the only difference now is that this is a longer process for a more permanent rule in our rules. Is that correct?
That's correct. And this one would be to accept or move forward with, excuse me.
The process of permanent rule change.
Yes,
Okay.
seek the governor's approval.
Mr. President, are we talking about chapter 7 still?
Chapter 4.
We're
Was-
talking about chapter 7, draft version 106/01/23 regular rules.
Your
Chapter
Honor,
4, Charlie? Chapter 4?
Chapter 4.
I have it under chapter 4, information practices, regular rules.
What you have here is you didn't consider I'm sorry, we didn't consider the regular set of rules, commissioners. We've talked about them, but our first motion was to adopt the emergency rules. We now need a motion to adopt that same version as regular rules.
But the question was it in chapter 4? It's chapter 4. We have chapter 4 on our agenda.
We are on chapter 7 still. We have not moved on to chapter 4.
Oh, okay.
Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead,
this is
Commissioner
Mr.
Bowe.
Bowe. I would make a motion to initiate the formal rulemaking process for the chapter 7 rules. The regular rules.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowe. Do we have a second?
I'll
Commissioner
second
Cabell,
it.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll give that to Commissioner Wildcat. I think she got under the wire. All right. Okay, we'll open it for comment, but I think the only difference in this one is we're going to start the process, which is a longer process with the 45, 75 day. Is that correct, Charlie?
That is correct.
Okay, any comments? Any concerns, any questions from the commission, from anyone outside? Speak up, Nick, if you see a hand, because I only have 7 people.
Will do, Mr. President.
All right, Roger. Okay, so we'll call the vote. All in favor of, we adopt, we're not adopting, we are, remind me of the motion real quick.
We're initiating the rule process.
Okay. All in favor of initiating the rule process, chapter 4,
7.
state aye.
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 All opposed? All right, thank you.
And just for clarification, that was chapter 7. Again, you said chapter 4, but that's okay. We're now on to chapter 4.
All right,
So chapter 4, very simple, changing our name, which was changed and then changed back and then changed again. So we'll get chapter 4 knocked out. It would be a similar motion as what we just had with the other set of regular rules.
all right. I think that's where we got confused. Chapter 4 should be simple. Let's hope.
Mr. President, I would move
Yeah.
we adopt chapter 4.
Okay. Do we have a second?
We're moving it through the process as opposed to adoption, right?
Yes. Accept.
Yes,
Second.
that is correct, Commissioner Wildcat.
I'll second that.
Initiate the process.
Okay, thank you. And we're just changing our name from parimutuel to gaming. So what's the downside of that?
None.
Wake up. All right, so now we have a motion to start the process of changing our name. Do we have any comments or discussion from the commission? Anybody from the outside who would like to make a comment or have a question? Hearing none, we will call the vote. All in favor of starting the process to change our name from parimutuel to gaming, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed or have another name? Say nay. Okay, moving on.
Mr. President, I'm going to have to leave the meeting at this time. Please excuse my.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Cactus. We'll see you later. All right,
President
let me get
Broussard, if I could acknowledge, Senator Driscoll did join the meeting. We also have Representative Bob Davis joining us as well.
that- Uh-oh. Now things are gonna go.
I'd like to turn this next one, item number 5A, new vendor license, over to Mr. Laramendi.
All right, thank you, Nick. You got the floor.
Thank you, President Broussard. Item number 5A is an application received from David Schmidt representing Longhorn Amusements. The application was received on March 6th, 2023, seeking licensure as a skill-based amusement game vendor. We received the application, all the fees, fingerprints, background questionnaire, and the required plans. The only thing that was not completed at the original application time was the lab report. Upon receipt of the application, myself, along with Auditor Lopez, reviewed the submission. And the lab report we had received about 2 weeks ago. And we have reviewed the lab report as well. Longhorn Amusement plans to use new skill games manufactured by Trestle Games. Wyoming state statutes and the rules of the Wyoming Gaming Commission govern the use of skill-based amusement games or devices. The Trestle game themes as presented conform to Wyoming state statute and the Wyoming Gaming Commission rules. We received the completed application, the certification from the lab, the internal controls plan, the reserve and bond accounts plan. After completion of the review, staff determined that the Longhorn Amusements LLC seeks licensure as a skill-based amusement game vendor. Longhorn Amusements plans to supply new games manufactured by Trestle Games in the state of Wyoming. All required information was received and appears compliant with Wyoming state statutes and Wyoming Gaming Commission administrative rules. The independent lab has also concluded that the games and themes manufactured by Trestle Games appear compliant with Wyoming state statute and Wyoming Gaming Commission administrative rules. The application was received on March 6, 2023. After review, I missed my spot. After review, the commission staff noted that all required information was submitted and appears compliant with Wyoming state statute and rules. The background was completed and showed no statutory disqualifiers. The commission staff would recommend approval of Longhorn Amusements as a skill-based amusement game vendors and would also recommend approval of Trestle Games and software Faithful Fortunes APK version 20.7.1 and Bighorn Duel.apk version 104.19.7.1. Along with this, the commission's had access to terminals for several months in our office, and we have not noticed any areas of concern. And I would stand for any questions on this one.
Thank you, Nick. Just a quick question. Is anyone else using Trestle Games in the state?
They are not. They would be
First time.
brand new to the state.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Nick regarding the applicant? I have a question. Nick, what are we having for brunch?
Yeah.
I got a box of Skittles back there.
Like, what? You're not supposed to bring food unless you share with everyone, Dick. All right, so no comments at the moment. We will call the vote. All in favor of approving the applicant, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay. Thank you, Nick. And going back to
Chairman,
my agenda.
President Broussard,
Yes.
I don't have written down who moved and seconded this.
Okay.
So who
Mr.
made,
President, I'd make that motion. This is Commissioner Bowl.
All right. Commissioner Bowl. And who seconded? Dixon.
President Broussard, Dan Schiffer, I believe I seconded that motion.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
President Bissard,
Yes.
Commissioner Rittoler.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question and it's a bunny trail. But we received fingerprints and did a criminal background. Who gives what fingerprint when you have a company like that? How does that work?
Nick or Charlie, you have an answer for that?
Yeah, President Broussard. So the way that the rules are outlined, it's anybody that owns 15% or more of the company and has control of the skill-based amusement game activities. Is how that works.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Rittoler?
Yes, thank you. I just was curious how that worked with a company like that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I believe we've already approved that. Let me run back up to my agenda here. And we are now on item 6, alpha.
President Broussard, item number 6 alpha is a request received from Wyoming Downs seeking approval of 2 new gaming arts titles. The titles operate on the Exacta wagering system. The game themes are Quick X Old Glory and Quick X Clear Cut. Both game themes have commission rates between 2.782% and 13.349%. I received this submission on 4/20/2022. I began reviewing all the lab reports, including photos of the game themes, video of gameplay, and the lab reports on 6/3/2023. The submission appears compliant and in line with other submissions of this type. Gaming Arts is currently licensed in good standing with the state of Wyoming. The handicapping on the Gaming Arts themes and models are completed the same way that handicapping is completed on the existing approved Exacta systems. When checked for against the 18-point compliance checklist, no areas of concern were noted. Based on the lab reports,
Should be the turn to
requested game themes and associated math models on the Exacta system appear to be in compliance with Wyoming state statute and commission rules. And I would recommend approval of these 2 themes. And I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have any questions for Nick from the commission? Any questions from outside the commission? Any comments? All right, hearing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of approving this app?
Excuse me.
Did we have
need
to make a motion?
Oh, sorry. Let's do that first.
Mr. President, I make a motion, we approve the gaming arts software, the 2 new game themes and the associated math models.
Thank you, Commissioner Wildcat. Do we have a second?
Yeah, President Broussard, Dan Schiffer here. I second the motion.
Thank you, Dan. Now, we will open it up for comments or questions. Anything from the commission? Anything from outside, Nick? Any hands?
I don't see
Anybody?
anything.
Okay. All right, so we will call the vote. All in favor of approving Gaming Art Software HHR 2 new game themes and associated math models indicate that by saying aye.
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 If you're opposed, say nay. Don't hear any, so it sounds like it passes. Okay, and I'm going to go back up to my agenda. And we are now on 7, executive session. Is that correct? Charlie? Is there a need,
that is correct.
commissioners, to go into executive session? Am I being heard?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you.
All right, so Commissioners, anything we've discussed today that need to go into executive session?
I would just like to ask if we're going to go into executive session to listen to what the Attorney General's opinion might be of the rules that we discussed earlier, the FBI discussion.
Regarding the FBI?
Yeah.
Nick, do we
Commissioners,
have the
what's your pleasure?
availability to go into executive session in this webinar?
Say that again, Charlie.
I was asking, excuse me, President Broussard, Nick, do we have the ability to go into executive session?
Yes, we can. I'd have to cut the live stream and then move everybody to a waiting room, but I can do it.
I do think that is a kind of question hanging out there, so. If
So what we would
like-
need, we would need a motion to go into an executive session to discuss the FBI grace period, I think would cover.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure? Would anybody like to make a motion? To go into executive session? Don't sound like it. Anybody, last chance?
President Broussard,
Yes, yes, sir.
I'd make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Commissioner Ritholler. Do we have a second? Anyone?
Second.
Is that Commissioner Francisco?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, so do we need to have a discussion or do we just vote on it?
Nope, you can vote on it now.
Okay. All in favor of going into executive session specifically to discuss the AG's opinion on the FBI? Indicate that by saying aye.
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 Okay, those who are opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, that's-
Hey,
all right, so we'll do a roll call vote real quick, Charlie. I think we have 2 nays, but I'm not 100%.
Yes, I believe that is correct, and I believe it was Commissioner Boyle and Commissioner Schiffer, if I'm not mistaken.
that's correct from here.
Yeah, I was an A also, Mr. President.
Commissioner Bull and Schiffer.
I vote nay too. I'm sorry, I didn't see if I unmuted or not.
Okay. All right. Charlie, do you have someone who can roll call?
I can do the roll call, so
Okay.
President Broussard,
Aye.
Covello is gone, Boyle,
Nay.
Commissioner Schiffer,
Nay,
Commissioner Ritholler,
Aye.
Commissioner Kura,
Aye.
Commissioner Francisco,
Aye.
Commissioner Wildcat,
Nay.
motion carries.
So just.
President
before we-
Broussard, I need a
Yeah,
couple
Go
of
ahead, Nick.
seconds here to get everybody moved around.
okay. So basically what's left of our meeting is this executive session and some comments about dates on item 8.
Correct.
So when we come back from executive session, if anybody wants to stick around for item 8, we'll be back in moments. Thank you. Take it away, Nick.
Did you accidentally take away Commissioner Schiffer?
Do you know what the last 4 of his phone number are? Is it 8044?
Well, if he was on there, I think he would probably say something.
8044.
Commissioner Schiffer, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, he's on.
Sorry.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
I did move the wrong one.
So just on the one screen here, we're showing Commissioner Ritholler, Commissioner Francis